Hello, this is my guide for recording OBS. My last one ran a little bit long, so I just want to re-record this and format it in a way that's a little more concise and easier to follow along with. So the very first thing you'll notice is that I'm actually using OBS right now, have it open. We have scenes on the left, sources on the right. Now, how do you get this program? Well, you go to obsproject.com, you can simply search it on the internet, but once you arrive here, you can click on whichever operating system you're using. You'll notice when I click on Windows, it automatically detects that I'm using a 64-bit system. So pretty easy. You should be able to just click on whichever one of those operating systems you're using and just download it, go through the usual installation process. The other program that I'm using to play back videos is VLC. Highly recommend it. Once again, it's available for pretty much every operating system. So highly, highly recommend it. It can play almost any video format or media format, including like audio files. So very, very good, open source, as you can see here. So great program, use it all the time, love it. That being said, once you finally open OBS, you'll notice that your scenes on the left are completely blank as well as your sources, which is how it's supposed to be. That's totally fine. We also have the audio mixer and all of the other pertinent buttons on the right. You'll notice that I'm recording right now because obviously I need to record myself to make a video. However, the thing I want you to notice and work on first is the scenes and the sources. So your scenes will be empty. The way you add a scene is by clicking this plus sign on the bottom left. Once you're here, you can name your source whatever you want. You hit OK, and now my screen is black because adding a new source doesn't have any sources. So I'll go back to my example. This is the what I clicked on. That's why you can't see anything because there's no sources. So the sources that you need to add are just two. The very first thing I'm going to add is the display capture. Once I add the display capture, you'll notice that my face disappears, completely gone. So here you'll notice that you can pick whichever display. I'm currently only using one screen, so we're fine with that. You can decide if you want to display your cursor. I highly recommend doing that, so that way we can see what you're clicking on. It'll make your video that much easier to follow along with, so we'll keep that. The reason my face disappeared is because on the right-hand side, the ordering of your sources matter. So if I actually move this new display capture to the side, you'll see that my face is back. But you can also circumvent this by simply putting it on top of the other two displays because it works on somewhat of a Z-axis. And so now you'll see it's going to put my webcam on top of whatever other sources are available in this scene, no matter what. So make sure that your video capture device is on top of your displays and you'll never run into any problems. I will delete the other display capture because we don't need to worry about that. Hit the plus sign again, go to video capture device, hit OK. And so this is what you'll be greeted with typically. Right now I'm using my webcam. FaceRig is a program that you can use to map your face to just like a virtual character, and it kind of works. It's not that great, but if I click on this, you'll see that it's not working because I don't have the program running. However, we'll go back to my webcam and you see me again. So resolution, FPS, display type. I highly recommend leaving this on default. However, if you did want to go to custom, you could change the resolution. The only thing is that your device isn't necessarily made to capture in this resolution, so there could be times where it chops and stutters. It's not made to necessarily do that. Also, the highest FPS you can possibly ever go to is going to be the default for your device, in addition to the video format being whatever your device can output. So if you want to just keep it simple, easy, prevent any problems, I highly recommend keeping it on device default. However, if you're confident that it won't work, or that it will work, then you can go ahead and customize it. Although I do recommend creating a couple recordings just to make sure that it works and there is no chopping or stuttering before you do anything like that. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. You'll notice now in the bottom right, I'm frozen because your video capture device essentially will completely dominate and take control of your webcam. This means that Zoom will not be able to use your webcam. So if you're recording using OBS, you will not be able to also use your webcam when you're in Zoom. So just keep that in mind. But that being said, OBS will have smaller recording sizes, so just keep that in mind. The way that we can get my face on the bottom right working again is if I go down and right click this, go to properties, we see I'm frozen, but what I typically do to fix this is I just deactivate it, reactivate it. Now I'm back to talking, and if we look in the upper left, you see that one is frozen now. So you can only have one possible webcam output at a time. I will go ahead and delete this. Now we're back to what we had before. So just to show you how quick you can do this, I'm going to switch to the other scene. It'll take me about 10 seconds. So the very first thing I'm going to do is display capture, hit OK, we're there. Video capture device, OK, working, boom, we're back. So that takes me all of about 10 seconds once you know what you're doing. make sure that your video capture device is on the top of the list of sources and you're set to go. So the next thing that we want to talk about is the audio mixer. As you can see, my microphone is picking up everything I'm saying, and we see this bar moving back and forth. Now, with the desktop audio, that's going to be anything that you're actually listening to. So if I go to YouTube and find a song, then you'll see that that bar will start moving. See, so this is what I'm actually listening to as the recorder. So you will be hearing my microphone, but what I'm listening to is the desktop audio. So just keep that in mind. You want to double check and listen to a song and actually talk just to make sure that it's working and picking up both of those sources correctly. If it's not, you can go ahead and right click or left click the gear and just make sure that the device that it's listening to is the one that you're actually playing audio through. If it's not working, that's typically what the problem is. So just double check that that's what is, yeah, that you're listening to the device that you actually want to be listening to. Over here, if I click on properties, the microphone that I'm using is my headset microphone. So that's all set to go, all working. So let's hop into the settings. For the settings, you don't need to worry about general. You don't need to worry about stream. Output, what I highly recommend is changing your recording path to somewhere that's easy to access, easy to find, so that way you can just quickly record stuff, go ahead and find it. I created a directory in my D drive so that way I can quickly record and place videos inside of this directory. Super easy and simple. Here's the VLC icon, just in case you're not familiar, if you're wondering like why is this video is under construction, they're not. So there we go, recordings. My recording quality is just high quality, medium file size. That's the smallest file size that you can get, and as you can see, it's pretty good quality, so I highly recommend just leaving it on that. The recording format, you can pick through a couple different ones. I have mine on MKV. I forget the reason why. It might have been because there's smaller file sizes, but largely you can pick whichever recording format that you want. MKV is supported by VLC, so that's why I use it. The encoder, however, you do want to leave on hardware. Software encoding can be really buggy and can sometimes like stutter. It's just not good. So make sure that your encoder is on hardware. It should just default to that, so you shouldn't need to change it. But if for whatever reason it doesn't default to hardware, you can go ahead and change that to hardware. It should be something like NVENC. Leave that as it is. Make sure you change your recording path to somewhere that's easy to find. I forget what this is by default, but if you just change it to a file that's like super easy to find, then you'll never run into problems. Audio, this is largely similar to what we were looking at in the mixer. You'll see that my desktop audio is the default. The reason I have it on default is so that if I switch between my headset or my actual speakers that are in front of me, which is the Realtek high definition audio, OBS will always pick up on whichever I pick as my default device using the Windows operating system. So if it's default, that means it's your system default. So if I leave it on default, whether I'm using my headphones or I'm using my actual speakers in front of me, it doesn't matter. My microphone, I leave on my headset microphone because for whatever reason, Windows really likes to default to my webcam mic, and my webcam mic is terrible. So I prefer it to never ever try to use that microphone. I never want it to use my webcam microphone. It sounds like trash. So I specifically tell it only use my headset microphone because it's much higher quality. If I'm streaming, recording, whatever, that's what I'm going to be using anyway. So I always wanted to use my headset microphone. It just sounds better. So I can tell it specifically only use this mic in this settings page. Additionally, down here again, I can click the cog, I can click properties, and I can set it over here as well. Moving on down, we went through output, we went through audio, now video. Initially, I made a video, I misspoke, which led me to re-record this video really quick. Essentially, your base resolution is going to be what your screen is actually outputting. So I'm using a 1080p display, which is what I want my canvas to be. You want it to be the highest resolution it can always be, no matter what, because if you don't, it's going to mess up the quality. It could maybe artifact. It's not going to look good. It's just not fun. Make sure that your canvas resolution is always the same as the resolution of your actual screen. It will look the best and it won't affect your performance whatsoever. Output scaled resolution. Now I misspoke in my first video. You do want to downscale this a little bit if you're streaming because you're actually sending your bits over the internet, and so you want to make sure that it's a little bit lower so that way you're not like sending massive packets, massive amounts of data over your network. However, for the purposes of recording, I tested this. It does not affect your file size, so I highly recommend keeping your scaled resolution to the same thing as your canvas resolution for recording. This will make it so that it's much easier to see, it's much higher fidelity, and it's just generally better. Now, in the future, if you wanted to use OBS for streaming, you could most certainly change your output resolution to a lower downscaled resolution. This will mean that it's a lower quality, and as you're streaming, it's a lower quality, but that also means that you're sending less information, and you don't need to worry about packet loss or stuttering, things like that. However, for the purposes of what we're using this for, we want to make sure that these are the same. It'll be the best quality picture and it won't affect your video quality. I promise. I tested it. I stamp of approval. Everything else, hotkeys, you really don't need to touch these. I mean, I did this a while ago, but largely you can leave this alone. Advanced, you can leave this alone. Change your file name formatting for whatever reason if you wanted to. Right now, as default, it essentially saves the year, month, date, and time. That's fine. Everything else, whatever, totally okay. Output, we already discussed that. Stream, don't need to touch that. Generally, you don't need to touch this. Okay. So that is OBS. I kind of ran through everything right there. If you have any questions, make sure to let me know. Otherwise, just double check by making a quick recording and watching it back that it is working as expected. But that is OBS, and that is largely how you will record yourself while you're using it. If you notice down here in the bottom right, you can also see how long you've been recording. So just double check this and make sure that it is recording and the time is going properly. Also, the bottom right shows your CPU usage. You'll see that I'm only using about 3%. Now it's 2.6% of my CPU. That's perfect. 60 FPS, perfect. Don't need to worry about that. Don't need to touch it. And now when I stop the recording, this will only be about 120 megabytes or so. Yeah, that's OBS. So you can also use Zoom if you want. I was told by John that Zoom will not impact you with the 60-minute limitation if there's only one person in the meeting. So if you want, you can use Zoom. However, if you do want to use OBS, there is also this. So just wanted to let you know if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on Slack. Otherwise, that's OBS. Thanks, guys.